it's interesting as we are here to do these resolutions. Many times we knew the person who is one of our predecessors. Many times we did not. But I think this is one of those times where I can legitimately say that the person who we are honoring today, along with one other woman in addition to my family, probably had the greatest impact on my life of anybody that I knew. So Jim and Bonnie. Jim was elected to the Assembly in 1978. He ran, lost in 1980, and then came back and won again in 1982, serving until 1992, when redistricting hit. Now, the interesting thing about Jim and Bonnie, for those of you who knew them, they were probably one of the most loving and special couples that you would ever see. But there was no doubt in anyone's mind who wore the pants in that relationship. It was Bonnie. And it was interesting because Jim really believed in term limits, so he authored the bill in the Assembly, never got a vote. But at the end of 12 years, he felt it was his time to move on. Now, Jim, when he ran, was in an incredibly competitive district. Every single race that he had was tight. He had to go door to door. I actually went door to door on my first real campaign with him in 1984. He actually wanted to make sure that we made a good impression when we went door to door, so he made me wear a white shirt and a black tie and black pants every day as we went out going door to door. Now, looking back, we might have looked like someone from a religious cult, but we went out, we looked good, and Bonnie made sure that we had more than enough to eat and more than enough to drink. But when 1990 came by, Jim decided it was going to be his last term because 12 years was the limit. Reapportionment occurred, and his incredibly competitive seat all of a sudden became incredibly safe. Now, Bonnie, knowing how difficult the races were, was incredibly happy with that opportunity. Jim, having gone through a heck of a lot of very difficult races, complained a lot about how did he never get this chance that Bonnie had. But I think it's because God knew that Bonnie was incredibly hardworking and she would have been fine no matter what. So she began her campaign. She had a primary. Of course, I helped on the primary. One of the big contentious moments that she and I had in our relationship was when she decided what her campaign colors were going to be for her yard sign. Now, I believed campaign colors should be in the primary, right? Green, red, yellow, blue. She believed they should be in the Bonnie Special. So she made a yard sign that was teal blue with pink letters because she thought that was the very best representation of what she would be able to see as people drove down the highway. Now, in so many of the circumstances, this was one more example where she was right and I was wrong. Now, she went on to serve. I served as her first legislative staffer because I worked as Jim retired and I began as Bonnie started. And it's interesting that on the same day that we are honoring Bobby Gronimus, we're honoring Bonnie because they were friends. For those of you who don't remember, because it was a long time ago, where the bagel place is across from the old movie theater, that used to be a Chinese restaurant. And Bonnie, Carol Owens, who represented the 53rd District, and Bobby Gronimus would many times, I don't know if Chinese was her favorite food, but very many times the three of them went there to solve all the problems of the world. And it was a different time because it didn't matter that you were Republican and you were a Democrat. They just liked the same food and enjoyed each other's company. And that's kind of the way that I looked at Bonnie. She was a fierce partisan. There was no doubt that she was Republican. There was no doubt that she was conservative. But she also understood that just because you're on the other side of the aisle doesn't mean you're a bad person. And I wish that sometimes we get more back to that, because that is the example that I think most of the people who were here set, and it's different. The interesting thing, too, though, is that as Bonnie went through the ranks, being in the minority, which is where we started, for those of us who have never been in the minority, you have a lot of time when you're in the minority. You have lots of time to do what you choose. You're not quite as busy. So we sent out a survey, and people sent back the survey. And on there, Bonnie had nothing to do, so she decided she was going to start calling every single person back who filled out the survey. We did it at night because she would have me stay there. I don't know why, but I stayed. So we would call back every person. She probably called back 1,400 people then. And that began the legacy of how everybody in Racine County knew her, because she was responsive, she was friendly, she was listening, she was tenacious, but she was a good, kind, caring person. And that's the example that she set for all of us. So it's hard, as I sit here, to think about the passing of somebody who in many ways was like a second mom to me. She actually died of COVID way back in 2020. So like so many people, way too soon. But at the same time, she had an opportunity to be with the man that she loved, her husband Jim, right up until the end. And I cannot think of a better testament to not just this body and this chamber, but her service than knowing that at the end, she still thought I worked for her. She still had no problem calling me from Florida, where they became residents, to tell me what I needed to do differently and where I needed to try to work a little harder. She became even more conservative as she got older, which I didn't really think was possible. But she did an excellent job. So today I am joined by her daughter, Linda, and her son, Jim, both of whom are incredibly close to me as well, because our families kind of grew up together. And I just wanted to say, on behalf of the legislature and all those who had a chance to serve her, we are here to honor your mom because she was special.